Welcome to Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and are willing to share their passion with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with the Latina perspective. This is season 3, focused on education. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hola! Today's episode with Brenda is filled with so much wisdom, it really got me excited to go through my week. Brenda is a leader in the education space with her involvement in several major groups that are striving to make a difference and elevate Latinx educators across the country. She's also a bilingual second grade teacher and a mom, so you might hear her little one in the background missing her while she's recording. Hashtag mom life. Anyway, our conversation is packed with lots of encouragement, so please enjoy. Hi, I'm so excited to share my next guest of the podcast. I am speaking with Brenda Mendoza, and we have met through CLM, another amazing Latina that I have met through Chicago Latina Moms, and she does so much in the education space. And so I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about the many roles that she has. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Hello, muchas gracias por darme la oportunidad de estar aquí. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Brenda Mendoza, and I wear a lot of hats. I think because I feel like it is my obligation to make sure that I help as many Latino, Latinx families and my students as much as possible. And I'm always looking for opportunities and ways to do that. So I think that's why I have all these roles. Everyone always asks me, like, how is it that you can manage all this? Well, I mean, I do have an extremely supportive family. And my parents have helped me raise my children. And I know like a lot of Hispanic families do. And I feel that because of that, I've been allowed to do so many things because they kind of, they know how important the work is that we're doing every day in education. So my full-time job is a bilingual teacher. I've taught every grade since kinder all the way up to like high school, but majority of my bulk of work has been on elementary. And that is really where I found my calling, and my passion was to work with elementary students. Recently, last year, I was teaching fourth grade bilingual, and this year I'm teaching second grade bilingual, which I've taught in the past and definitely missed the primary students. You do speak more Spanish in the primary grades, and I think that that's what I love about teaching second grade, whereas in fourth grade, they're transitioning more into the English language. So there isn't so much the bridging of the languages. So I miss that so much. So I'm glad I get to be in second grade and predominantly speak Spanish to the kiddos. So that's my full-time role. In addition to that, I also am like an ambassador or an instructional coach in our building. We have like, we're trying to really work on providing equitable opportunities for students. And so our district decided that they were going to introduce it's more like a philosophy. It's called challenge learning. And it does come from the United Kingdom. So it's just this whole philosophy that comes from the other side of the world, but they're doing so many innovative things in education that my district really felt like they would align really well with us because that's what we want to do. We want to be very innovative in what we do in the classroom. And so when I got trained and started doing this, I felt as if it was going to be a whole lot, but really it just started shifting my thinking and my philosophy of teaching from just giving kids information to actually teaching children how to think. And that's what challenging learning is all about. It's giving them the tools to think for themselves. So it sometimes takes a lot longer to teach a lesson, but that's okay because that's what's needed. For example, if we're teaching math, I don't just put a problem up and give the solution, which is pretty typical. We'll sit there and we have to talk about like the number, a lot of number sense. Like, okay, what is this number, and how can we draw this number? How do we represent this number? And again, it's second grade, so that's where they're at. And really, what does it mean to add numbers? Like what does that look like? And we have this whole discussion because these concepts are so abstract to kiddos, especially second graders, where they're starting to add maybe sometimes three numbers. That's big for them. They go from first grade to just learning numbers and what their value is, to now adding and subtracting. It's a huge jump. And I know as a former fourth grade teacher, that eventually, right after third grade, they start learning about multiplication, and then it's multiplying and dividing big numbers. So if the kids don't understand why we're doing it, we're going to lose them. So that's challenge learning. And that's another role I have, where I'm supposed to help like my team and my school try to implement some of these strategies to really help kids like have discussions about their learning and really talk about their thinking. And so that's the bulk of my work. But in addition to all those other things, I am a board member for Illinois ASCD. And what that is it's an organization that works on providing different types of professional development for educators. My role specifically is being the whole child chair. And so what that means is there's a lot of different philosophies and approaches to whole child, but specifically through ASCD, it's an organization that works on education and elevating educators and educational leaders, and throughout the whole country. So we have affiliates in every state, and this year I think we just have an affiliate in Puerto Rico and in Mexico. So we're now expanding to the world, and so we're trying to make sure that all everything that we believe in and what we want to see in schools is all very similar. So our whole child approach is just, we talk about tenets. And so one of them is making sure that kids are engaged in the classroom. And we talk specifically how that would look like how can we engage our kids? Well, one way that we always promote is like having culturally diverse literature in the classroom. We really think that that's important, that the classroom is culturally responsive teaching, that we're reflecting our students in our classroom. So that's a quick way to engage kids in the learning environment. And then we go from engaging, we go to challenging, which I already explained. Challenging learning is really for kiddos to understand how they're thinking. So yes, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever heard of the learning pit, but they're like the creators of the learning pit. And what it means is essentially we teach kids that in order for them to really learn, they need to struggle. And when they're in the struggle, that's actually when they're building and growing new neurons. So, second graders are talking about how this is how my brain works, and this is how it grows when I'm learning new things. So definitely they have to be challenged, because if they're not, then they're just learning basic information and basic recall, or they're just doing activities. So sometimes we really have to know the difference between is my child just doing activities at school, or are they really processing actual learning? So that's the challenge learning. So we've got the engagement, the challenge, we have the support. So that brings in the whole social emotional learning. So that's like a whole other area of work that I do, especially like within my district and through ASCD. I'm always doing like the social emotional learning conference that we do on an annual basis. But that is all about making sure my kiddos are coming in and they're ready and they're empowered for the day. So I talked about the engagement tenant, and then the challenge tenant. The support tenant is specifically social emotional learning. So it looks different depending on which grade level you are, but we use like the CASEL competencies that were actually adopted and created here in Illinois. And so it talks all about how students need to have self-awareness. They need to understand like their big feelings and why they're feeling them, but also be able to identify those feelings. A lot of kiddos will be like, oh, I'm bored, but maybe they're not bored. Maybe they're just tired or they're frustrated, but they don't have that like language to be able to express and say how they feel. That's just one component, is to create like a universal language so that our kids in our building understand their feelings. So be self-aware. For second graders, that's super important. Self-awareness, and also being able to communicate why they're feeling what they're feeling. Because eventually you want, like as a fourth and fifth grader, you want them to build those real strong relationships. So if we don't teach them self-awareness, they don't actually ever start being able to have really good, solid relationships with their peers. And I think that that's sometimes one of the biggest issues in schools, is that that's not necessarily being taught everywhere. So as like the whole child advocate, as the chair, whole child chair, that's my role, is to constantly be talking about, are we engaging our kids? Are we making sure that they actually are enjoying what they're doing, and they're really um like growing from what we're teaching, not just like recalling facts, which is, I feel, a way that I was taught. I was just taught to like, here, remember these dates. And it's like what for? No one ever, like, if you asked me what are these dates for, or what is this information for, I was never given an explanation. Whereas our kids, when our administration team comes in, they're always asking, so what are you learning? Why do you think you're learning this? And so kiddos right away, that because they've been immersed in this type of environment, they'll tell you, oh, well, you know, practicing this reading strategy is because I need to know how to read grade level text and be able to comprehend what I'm reading, and then be able to learn from reading. And so things like that, that little second graders, 7-year-olds can say, you're like, wow, like this is amazing if we could get the whole like world to teach this way. So that's just 3 tenets. The other one's healthy. And that one's really simple. Like I know the state of Illinois has now passed into law the 30 minutes of recess. So that's part of it, is definitely making sure kids have time to play, because children need to play. We've removed from like pre-K classrooms have a lot of play that they're reintroducing, and kinder is slowly reintroducing play. But little by little, we were seeing play be removed from the classroom, and kiddos being required to learn to read earlier and earlier without really even having syntax or understanding what that is. So play is extremely important. And that's the tenet of health. And so we talk about making sure, like, we have a fruit and veggie grant in our school. So kids are trying different fruits and vegetables every single day. And that's supporting that tenet of health. And then, our last tenet, so I said it's engaged, challenged, safe. Oh, I didn't talk about safe, supported, and healthy. Safe is, again, we're having a lot of issues with kiddos coming back after the pandemic and really having a very hard time transitioning back into the classroom. Again, second graders, my second graders have never had a real like regular school year. For them, kindergarten was the beginning of the pandemic. So their learning was interrupted in kindergarten. And then in first grade, we were trying to figure out what was the best method and way to teach kiddos during a pandemic. But through that, there was a lot of trial and error. And now this is still not a very normal school year. We're wearing masks. We're separated from our peers and things like that. But it is the first time that they have like a regular schedule, and they can go to art and music. And so it feels more normal, but it's still not, I don't think we'll ever be back to super regular. And I don't know if we want to. I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed, especially with like us integrating whole child tenets. And I don't know if I want to go back to just the more traditional sense of teaching. But those are the whole child tenets. And this year we worked really, really hard, the whole child team, to pass policy with a state representative that works with the team. And we were able to get March declared Whole Child Month in Illinois. So that was a huge win. We were super excited about that. And that's what we were kind of doing on our free time.
Oh my goodness, you really do fill a lot of roles, and it's so encouraging to see so much good happening in the education space, and that people are rethinking education and trying to think about the child as opposed to just grades and hitting certain marks.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree that I'm so glad that that is shifting, and not everywhere do you see that yet. I mean, definitely like my own children, I have 5 kiddos, and so you do see that at the middle school and the high school. It just seems like they're really really struggling with shifting thinking, and it's based on grades, and then you get a 0 and kids can almost never recover from that 0. And I don't know if teachers are really reflecting on that in the middle school and the high school, but our kids are just so tired of that, and I think they could be doing more engaging things than just like getting an A and a B. Like, what does that really like mean to them? So yeah, I wish I could definitely be in the middle or high school to be able to speak on that. And so hopefully, like some of the high school teachers or middle school teachers come to our conferences and things like that, and hear us talk about it. And even if it's just one, they could start making that shift and that change for their school.
Yeah. I know you talked about a lot, and so I want to break down each section a little bit more. Um, so you talked about being a bilingual teacher in all of the grades, which is fascinating to me. But I'd love to learn more about how bilingual education looks like from start to like when you said that you were teaching high school aged, and then there was like a transition to like more English learning. Can you walk us through what bilingual teaching is?
Yes. And so in I would say that the most effective and research-based way to teach bilingual education is called biliteracy. And I feel like that's what I was taught when I was going to school with my undergrad and getting my endorsement. And I really felt like biliteracy actually is equally hitting both languages. So it's almost like the dual language program, but a dual language program, essentially what they do is you'll have non-English speakers and you have non-Spanish speakers all in one classroom. So now you're teaching both English and Spanish to non-English speakers and non-Spanish speakers at the same time. Whereas in the bilingual program, typically it's Spanish speakers. We do have, I know there's other districts, like the Naperville School District, they already have like a Mandarin bilingual program. So it's not just Spanish. And American Sign Language is also another form of bilingual education. And so it's essentially learning 2 languages. But biliteracy, there's just so much to having like a biliterate classroom. So you really have to have like I have a word wall, and my word wall has to be it doesn't have to be, but this is like the way I approach bilingual education. And so I have like my Spanish words, they're one color, and my English words are another color, so that they're able to differentiate both words, but they're equally represented and they're both up there on the board, because I always tell them we're bilingual, we speak 2 languages, so we embrace both the languages. And then same thing, like if I make an anchor chart, it's really important that the Spanish is represented as well as the English is represented, which I did try to do that in 4th grade, but it is a lot harder, because that's when they start with like the state testing and things like that, where all of a sudden the English language seems to be a little more important than the Spanish. And I won't say that I fully agree with that, but every district does everything so different. So in my classroom, like I said, I approach it where I have everything in both languages. If I have a story and I do a story during shared reading, it's in Spanish first, and then it's in English later on in the week or later on in the day. And that's the same thing with math. Like I will support the vocabulary in both languages. So in our district specifically, we start with, in kindergarten, it is all Spanish. So it is 100% in Spanish, and everything's taught in Spanish. Every subject, everything's in Spanish. And then in first grade, again, it continues to be all in Spanish. Then in second grade, that's where you start seeing the transition of introducing the English language with the Spanish language. So that's that real transitional year. And then third grade, you're still seeing that bridging of the languages, the Spanish and the English, Spanish and the English. Whereas in fourth grade, I would say it's more like an 80-20 at that point, where 80% is in English and 20% is in Spanish. And then in fifth grade, it's still kind of that model, but it's an early exit program. Our district's an early exit program. So kids are introduced to the English sooner. Other districts do dual language, where they go all the way to high school. Typically, there is bilingual education in the middle school, but the high school in our district, I believe, yeah, they have this year, and it's amazing what they've done. They have every single subject has a bilingual teacher in it who speaks Spanish, which is amazing. So the kids, pretty much, they're getting all that native language support all the way to high school. But I could say that a lot, the language of the instruction changes a lot as they get older, depending, because if there's a lot of newcomers in high school, I know that they use the Spanish language to support them. So it really just depends on the grade level and the need of the student, because all our kids are so different. My kiddos in my class, I think that about half predominantly speak Spanish. The other half speak both pretty well. I do have a lot of non-readers this year, just because, like I said, they've never had a regular normal year. So I have quite a few non-readers, which they don't read in English or Spanish, and they're just learning letter sounds and how to like blend words and understanding what reading is. And that's okay. That's where we're at. But I know that they're going to leave reading, and that's what I'm happy about, because I already see it, like how much they've grown from like August to now. So that's our bilingual program, but every program's different. I have a lot of friends who teach in Texas, and again, their program would probably emulate a lot the biliteracy philosophy, where maybe I would say from kinder all the way up to high school would be in the both languages. And it just depends on what district you're at, and what is the philosophy that they believe in, and what are we trying to accomplish at the end of the day. And it is for kids to be empowered, for me, in both languages. And since we have those bilingual teachers in those classrooms, even at the high school level, I know that my district really does value the Spanish language, and values us as well as teachers.
That's amazing to hear how much uh, bilingual education is supported. And can you remind me, you work with in the Chicago Public School District?
Oh, I don't. I do live in Chicago, but I do not work with the Chicago
Oh,
Public
okay.
School District. I have been traveling for a very long time, all the way to Aurora. So I teach out in Aurora, and there is East Aurora is one district, and West Aurora is the other district. So I teach in West Aurora, and we're like just separated by the river, but the way we do things are very, very different. In both districts. But I mean, it's a drive, but for me, it's also just my own. It's so important for me to have that drive, to just like the drive there. I'm like essentially prepping myself for the day. I listen to podcasts. That's how I found your podcast. So I listen to your podcast on the way to work. And I also just listen to like just calming music. And it's like a form of meditation, but I'm driving. So I'm careful not to close my eyes. And then just to get ready for the day. And then on the way home, I also have that opportunity to just like decompress from the day, because I do have 5 children, and I know they have all these needs when I get home. It's important for me to just almost like reset. And so once I walk into the door, everything that happened at school, everything that went on during the day. It's not gone, but it's moved aside so that I can make sure that my kiddos feel that they're important too, and not just work.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, for
that's why I
sure.
love
Oh,
driving.
yeah.
And I say they always are like, "Oh, don't you want to work closer?" And I do have my administrative license, so I could be a principal if I wanted to. I have the license, but as of right now, like I do feel like being a practitioner and being in the classroom and doing that work, especially right now during a pandemic, I think that that's like my calling right now. And it would not feel the same if I was out of the classroom. So I need to be in there. I need to be experiencing this right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I want to go back and talk about the um I want to talk about the Latinos Teach campaign. If you want to talk through like how you got involved and then what it is, that'd be great.
So what happened was is it all these things, just all these connections, they start like years before they actually happen. And so in 2015, I ran across this program called the ASCD Emerging Leaders. And so at the time, I was working on my master's, and I was creating like a family literacy program for our district and in our school. And so it was part of like my action research project that I had to do for my master's. So you had to collect data and you had to do something that would make a huge impact. So I remember the emerging leaders, like it was something that was emailed to me by a professor or something like that. It had to be a professor. So when I opened it up, I was like, okay, this is like, what is it? And so it is a program that takes like new teachers and really wants to shape them into like leadership roles. And so I'm like, this sounds really amazing. And the application process was a little daunting, a little difficult, I would say, because especially like I spoke Spanish first growing up. And so for me, I'm constantly always like I think in Spanish, and then when I want to write, it's almost like I have to like translate it and process it, and there's like this whole steps and process I have to do to be able to write. So sometimes I'm not super confident in my writing in English because I always feel like I'm an English language learner for the rest of my life. That's my I don't think I'll ever master the English language, or the Spanish language for that matter. I feel like I'm always torn. What do they always say? Ni de aquí, ni de allá. And it's like, it's so true in every aspect because I don't feel like I've mastered the Spanish language either. But either way, so I went ahead and applied, and I didn't hear anything for a long time. And then all of a sudden, I get like an email, and they're like, you've been accepted as an emerging leader of 2015. And that was the year. And I was like, wow, like this is amazing. And through that, I was able to do like, webinars, podcasts. They have like, again, they're a huge organization. So they're always doing like, they do this conference called Empower. And it's all about the latest and newest philosophies that are going on in schools. And so there's always a platform. We have a platform to be able to speak to other educators, and they just do so much to make sure that we feel empowered enough to start taking on leadership roles. So through that, I became a board member for our affiliate here in Illinois. And then you start networking and connecting with a lot of different affiliates. And through the years, I made these really good friendships. They run the English, I'm sorry, not the English, but the emerging leaders affiliate specifically. So they have like their own like president, vice president, and just their whole board members. So that group has some amazing educators who are doing such amazing things in the world. And one specific educator, her name's Megan Everett, and she is right now currently working with the White House and creating policy. And it's amazing because the things she does is just so amazing. And then my other colleague and friend, because they're definitely my friends. They're like my Facebook friends, and we just share our families and everything. But we also support each other in our professional roles. Her name is Krista, and her last name is Lay, Krista Lay. And so she actually has her own consulting business, and it's called like Renaissance Consulting, but she does everything in social emotional learning. So anything that I've ever learned about social emotional learning has come from her, because she's been talking about social emotional learning for like, what, well, 2015, that's when I met her, right? So it's been years. It was even before it became like popular lingo. She was already discussing how that was absolutely necessary in schools. So everything I've learned is from her. So these two ladies, like, they essentially nominated me for this Latino Teach. And essentially they're like, okay, well, they posted in our group, but they're like, we need, they're looking for like really like hardworking Latino, Latina, or Latinx teachers, educators in the field, and they really want to make sure that you have like some leadership roles, and you've done other things, and they're really looking to help like promote education, promote like Latinos to be interested in going into the education field. And so they tagged me, and they're like, we're going to nominate you, and you're going to have to fill this document out and everything. And good luck. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. But at the same time, you're like, I have so many things I need to do. That you're like, do I really want to like do something else? And then again, you're always like that whole imposter syndrome where you feel like, okay, do I really like deserve some type of this kind of recognition? Like, is it really like that amazing what I do or don't do? Like, I don't know. Sometimes you just start doubting yourself, and you're like, well, it's not a big deal. And why would they like want me or anything like that? So I definitely had lots of doubts, and you always have that little voice, like I said, I do suffer from anxiety. So I've got that, always that voice that's constantly telling me that maybe you're not good enough to do something. So I definitely was like putting it off. And then finally, I started thinking, I'm like, okay, everything that I do has to filter through my values. And so I'm like, is this going to like, promote the value of being a lifelong learner? Like I always say, I'm a lifelong learner. Yes, because I'm definitely going to be learning some new things that I don't know. I don't know everything, and I'm going to continue not to know everything, but I want to learn. That's something I strive for every day. And then I said, is it what's best for kids? Because those are, everything gets filtered through them. Is this going to be good for children? And then I'm like, okay, yes, both of these important things are getting hit with this. So I need to apply. So sure enough, I applied and everything, and didn't hear anything. But then when I did, it was like, I don't remember their name, but he's like it's almost like the assistant to the Secretary of Education, like emailed and said that they wanted me to be part of this. And I was like, oh my gosh, the White House. No, it's like, I like, what does this mean? Like, what do I do? And so essentially what he said is like, okay, well, I want to collect your story. I want to know like your background. I want to know like what you do with kids and what you've done in leadership. And so essentially it's like, I'm going to be like mentor or liaison to other Latino, Latinx educators. And so that's how they want to use this Latino Teach is really, they talk about, like I said earlier, that 1 in 4 kiddos is considered, Latinx, Hispanic, Latino. I say all of them because I do have different families that use different terminology when talking about themselves. So I like to cover all the bases. And so, we really need more Latinx teachers, and I believe that only 9% of across the nation are Hispanic teachers, and only 2% are Hispanic men. So we really are lacking educators that look like our kids, that sound like our kids, that have the same experiences and stories. And so I thought this is a very powerful campaign, and I'm going to be able to be the voice for that. So not only will I participate in like they're like discussions. So they have discussions with the assistant to the Secretary of Education, and they have like these panels at different conferences and things like that. But they also have like all these prom- like like things that they're going to be doing online too. So there's probably going to be like some live streaming, some conversations on YouTube. So it's just all about promoting the work that Latino, Latinx educators do, and they're helping support that. They really want to highlight all the hard work and all the things that the few Hispanic teachers and educators are what we're doing, and trying to help others join us in doing that work too.
That's amazing. That's exciting.
Super exciting. I was like, oh, do I get to go to the White House? No, I'm just kidding. I was like,
Yeah,
that's
did
my first
you?
question. No, no, I didn't ask that, but I'm pretty sure that there'll be an opportunity. I know with ASCD, the first time we met as a whole organization, they flew us out to Washington D.C. and I mean, there was just so many things happening there. And I remember that was the first time, 2015, that I heard the word growth mindset. And I know that now it's super popular to talk about growth mindset, but Carol Dweck, the researcher and a creator of growth mindset, was there. And it's like, we met her. And that was like, one of like those moments as an educator where you're like, oh, I've read your research. You're amazing. And to now, like, I feel like all these innovative things just start catching on, but it takes years in education to now it be common language. It took years. It took years to get to that.
I am amazed by all that you're able to juggle and accomplish. I'd love to hear like what brought you to this place. Like, did you always know that you wanted to be in the education field? Uh, like, what was your experience in your own education life?
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's a really important question because that's definitely what has driven me my whole life. So I was born and raised in Chicago. I know my parents lived in Pilsen, maybe my first year of my life. But like all parents, they're like, okay, well, we need to find um, somewhere to live where she can have like more opportunities and things like that. And so we moved to Cicero, which was essentially across the street, like moved to Cicero, and Cicero. I mean, at home I was really just sheltered from everything that was happening outside at the time because this was the early '80s, and there's just so much going on, especially in the town of Cicero. That I didn't know about. And so my parents really tried to shelter me from that. My mom always like read to me in Spanish and spoke to me in Spanish and encouraged me to watch Spanish TV. And for her, it was really important that I kept the Spanish language. Then again, for my dad, it was really important that I spoke English because he's like, that's the language of this country. And as a first generation Latina here in this country, it's like, boy, the pressures that are put on you is like, and early on, you feel it. Like you had to, like you were carrying all your ancestors and all your like everybody like on your shoulders, and it was like it's you got to do this, like there's no other way. You have to like break through all these barriers and really make a difference in this country. And so early on, I could tell because my dad, education was so important to my dad. And he would tell me from like the get go, from being a 5-year old, like, and telling me like, you got to go to college. It's really important. Like, you got to go to college. You'll be like the first, like to go to college. You have to go to college. It was just like so important. And I knew that there was no other option or any other way that's what I needed to do. Like, there was no question about it. But it was a really rocky start to my education. I started in kindergarten in Cicero, and the school was called Burnham Elementary, and it's still there. It's still they're doing amazing things with bilingual education. I love all the things Cicero School District is doing currently for bilingual education, because I've met with a few of their leadership team. It's such great stuff. But at the time, right, there was no support for me. There was no support for me in my native language. And because my dad had been speaking to me in English, I had a sense of understanding what my teacher was saying, and I had a little bit of know-how how to communicate. But there were so many things that happened that first year in kindergarten. Is like, first of all, like, there were only two other kiddos that spoke Spanish or that looked like me. Everybody else was completely just white and spoke English, and that was Cicero at the time. And then I remember my teacher was just not super patient with us. I'm pretty sure it was just like lack of training of what to do with Spanish speaking students. And so I remember like at one point I became like the translator for my teacher, and I was always translating to the other two children who didn't have as much English. And I was like, what am I learning? Like, I remember thinking that, like, what am I learning if I'm just constantly translating all day? And then the strangest thing happened is like my teacher just, for whatever reason, didn't think that we were either learning fast enough or we were just not learning at the same pace as my peers. And so I remember that she like put us in a different classroom, and I really didn't like understand. I was like, well, am I going to get support here? Like, what's happening? And so I, like, being like, the good little girl, like, I wasn't really telling my parents anything until my dad's like, so how's school going? And it was almost like I had been holding on to it for so long. And I'm like, I'm not with my teacher anymore. I'm in a different classroom. I don't know what's going on. And I don't know what happened. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you, how long have you been in another classroom? Like, what is going on? And so because I couldn't give him those answers, he did go with like his little bit of English, and he went in there and he was going to advocate for his daughter. And that's probably where I got my love of advocating for others, because my dad was like, oh no, you're not doing this to my daughter. And so he went in there and he's like, what's going on? Why'd she get, like, why is she not in her regular class? Like, what's happening? So what had happened was that the teacher thought that we would thrive in the sheltered special ed program. So she thought that because we like were learning a different language, that for some reason we had a learning disability. And my dad was so upset. And he's like, Monday morning, my daughter is not going back to that classroom, because obviously that teacher does not, support my daughter and doesn't want what's best for her. But she's going to be in another kindergarten classroom on Monday. And sure enough, Monday, I think me and my other two friends, we were in the same classroom again, but we were with another teacher. And it was because my dad was like, no, this is, he knew that, like, you have to go through a process to qualify, for extra support and all this. And he didn't know a whole lot about the world of education, but at least he knew that, like, wait a minute, like, there should be steps that take, and I should be able to authorize this movement or this move from classrooms. And he knew he didn't. And I was glad that he did advocate for us, because I wish I would have told him sooner that was happening. But that is definitely like when my like passion for helping others started to really take hold. I feel like it started right there as a 5-year-old. I learned that I was different. And for whatever reason, the world was not okay with my differences. So it was really difficult to rewrite that narrative as an adult, because you're like, no, that's not true. Like that's not true. Not everyone feels this way, and what you have to offer, is important and valuable. But it took a lot to rewrite that narrative. And but as I was going through school, like, I always felt like I needed to tell a story. And so for me, it became about, like, I wanted to go into journalism and I wanted to be a writer, and all of this was a way for me to share my experiences, but also, like, look what's happening in the world. So I really wanted to share. That was like my big thing. So I went to Columbia College, and I was there for a couple years to be a journalist and to be a writer. And then finally I got, like, the opportunity to actually work at a newspaper. I was working, like, at the Old Life newspaper. It was, like, from Berwyn. And then I realized, like, wait a minute, like, this is not making, like, the impact I want, like, right now. Like, there's just so much that goes into, like, writing in a newspaper and getting a story, and it just was not fast enough for me. And so I decided, like, I need to do something else. And then I remembered, like, my experiences in school, and that was always something that just kept coming to the forefront. Like that little voice telling you, hey, like, this is where you're needed. Like, you need to start looking into this. And sure enough, when I just finally started to really listen to my inner voice, I was like, I need to be an educator. Like, that is how I'm gonna, like, make immediate impact. And sure enough, like, I started working as a teacher assistant. Like, I've worked every single job in education, like, from bottom to the top. And so I was a teacher assistant, and I learned from some amazing bilingual teachers. Sandra Geska, she was, like, my mentor, and I still talk to her to this day. But I remember, like, seeing her in action and just being so passionate about bilingual education and being such an advocate for her students. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I don't want to teach in a gen ed classroom. I want to teach with students who speak the language I was born speaking and who are learning the language, but I'm going to make it, like, so that they feel super supportive and they're loving every minute of it, because I don't want anyone to ever feel what I felt when I was 5 years old. And so that's it. That was my calling. That was my passion. And it was hard. It was really hard. There was a lot of things that get thrown in to detour you from what you want to do and things like that. I go back to how much I loved writing, but the fact that professors all the time would be like, oh, well, you gotta work on that writing. You gotta work on your writing. And you're like, gosh, like, that's always been something where, again, you gotta quiet that voice, because I was able to get 2 masters and write 2 master theses, and my writing was not a problem at that point. So I was like, you gotta shut those voices down and push through, and you can actually do anything that you really set not your mind but your heart to.
Oh man, that your story is amazing. And I know that, like, this is what are meant to do. And I love hearing the journey that you've been through and how it started. Like, you knew this was gonna be your passion since you were so young. And I'm just so grateful for you sharing all of this and for all that you're doing. I know that, yes, you said it takes a lot of time for actual change to be made in the education space as a whole, but it starts with individuals, like, doing what they can to make a difference. And I know we talked a little bit about the importance of representation, and I'm just so thankful that you are taking the initiative and showing people, and that you're in this space. I want to ask if you have any encouragement or advice for the next generation of educators or leaders or even parents that might need help advocating for their kids?
Yes. So definitely for parents, I think that this is one of, another one of my passions, but it's all mixed into education. And I always tell parents that, you are your child's first teacher. Like it's you start with that. And I try to tell them and explain like how there's this project Juntos from California. And I don't know if you know this, but California did, it was like Proposition 766, something like that. It was like a seven. I used to know. No, 622. It was 622, Proposition 622. And they removed the Spanish language from every single classroom throughout the state. And this is not in practice anymore, but it was. So this whole proposition took away the Spanish language. And so what teachers started doing is they formed this called Project Juntos. And what that did was create a space to help parents understand like the language of what was happening in the classroom, so they could essentially help support the Spanish language and the content in the curriculum at home. And so we tried really hard in 2010 at Greenman to do something very similar. And it was so empowering to parents. And I just really want them to know that your voice is so powerful, that you have to advocate for your kids, and you have so many rights, and to definitely push through and do what's best and what your heart is telling you to do for your kids. And so that's what I say to parents. And it's like, if your school doesn't have, a literacy workshop, maybe talk to a teacher that's passionate who wants to start one. And definitely that makes a huge impact. It's like, it's the bridge to the parents, and that's absolutely necessary in order for us. It's called academic socialization involvement, and that is actually what makes the most impact when parents are involved in their child's education. It's that they know the same language we're using in the classroom. For future educators, I always go with what my dad used to tell me. He would be like, man, it's really, really hard to change the world. But you know what's not hard, Brenda, is to leave it a better place. And so that's what I'm going to leave everybody with, that you don't have to like go and join a board, and advocate, for different causes. You don't have to do all that. What you're doing in the classroom, that is power right there. And so don't forget that every single day that you're in there, and every single day you're impacting your students, that you are making a difference, and you are leaving the world a better place little by little. And so don't forget that.
Oh my goodness, that's so powerful. Thank you. I am like ready to go for my week after hearing
Let's do
all that you
this.
shared. Yes. For the listeners, we are recording on a Sunday night, and I'm ready to go for my Monday morning. I am so appreciative that you have taken the time to speak with me, and you need to thank your family too, with your 5 kids, your husband.
You're all
Like,
being very quiet.
I appreciate. Yes, and I appreciate the fact that you have a lot going on, and that you took the time to speak with me for the podcast. I really want to elevate educators' voices, um, the Latina educator voice, and I want to bring more representation and show people that, like, the Latinx community is out here, and we care, and we are trying to make a difference. And if we can like continue sharing each other's stories, we can collectively make a difference, because we can see that more people care, and we can collaborate, and we can, like you said, leave the world a better place. So I appreciate your time and all your words. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Karina. Thank you for having this podcast. Like I said, it's very empowering to hear the stories every day on my way to work. And I'm just like so grateful, for the opportunity to be here and be able to share one story of educators.
Yeah. Do you want to share where people can find you, like, or if they wanted to reach out to be part of some of the things that you're part of?
Oh, definitely. So if you are interested in learning more about the whole child, I definitely have my Instagram, I think, is where I do focus more of work that's happening in the classroom and across the state. It's at Maestra Mendoza. And I do have a YouTube channel, and I've got like a Twitter, and all of them are at Maestra Mendoza. And so if you want to follow and listen and learn different things, like I share a lot about my family, but I also share a lot about what's happening in the classroom, and I would love to chat with all of you more.
Yeah, thank you. I will definitely include the link and all the links in the show notes and at the end of the YouTube video for people to check out.
That'd be wonderful.
But yes, thank you so much. I hope you have a good rest of your evening and a good week. And I appreciate you so much.
You too. Thank you. I appreciate you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I'm so proud to know her and all that she's doing to advocate for our next generation of leaders. I'm so thankful she took time out of her weekend to talk with me. It's amazing to learn about all the things that are shifting in the education space. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. There'll be a new episode every Tuesday, so after you listen, feel free to take a screenshot, to post on Instagram, and tag at Elevating La Cultura, or send me a DM. You can also comment on our YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So leave a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get more ears listening to these stories and continue elevating La Cultura. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Adios!